Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to my power scaling series in which I'm going to be going through the entire Cell saga of Dragon Ball Z from start to finish. If you guys are interested, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and enable all notifications, as well as hitting like and hyping this video up so that you'll be able to see every single one of these videos in this series right away when they come out. And in case that you missed some of the series along the way, make sure to check the end screen of this video when it's over so that you'll be able to, in turn, go to that playlist and see everything else leading up to this. Now, before we begin, I also wanted to tell you about my book series, The Children of Aman, beginning with the first book, Nemesis of the Absence, a story of thieves who band together in the name of vengeance, using the fundamental forces of creation wielded by the main character, Seraph, a speaker. And you get to see a lot of things such as action, adventure, fight scenes, romance, cool powers, and that much more along the way. So if you're interested, make sure to go down below in the description and get your own copy, physical or digital, today. But with that being said, let's get directly into scaling the Cell saga. And so let's get into a little bit later on, because then we actually do have another huge power up that happens. That being Piccolo going to merge with Kami. So when this happens at that point in time, well, he gets way more powerful. This is also where we get the introduction of things like Cell, and eventually he shows up. This is the impetus for Piccolo and Kami fusing to begin with, because Piccolo wanted to fuse in order to kill the androids, but Kami, he disagreed. He didn't think that they were somebody, he basically blamed the Z fighters. He said, well, maybe Trunks' future was different. These androids fought you in self-defense and still didn't kill you. And not just that, but also what happened was that, they might go the way of good. In this case with Cell, that is not the case. Instead, his power and his threat is so great in the eyes of Kami that they have to, in turn, merge together to be able to overcome and defeat the evil of Cell. Now, when this happens, we see Piccolo gets a huge power up. He goes from being somewhere maybe weaker than the Super Saiyans to being individually stronger than all of them. And thus, as a result, he's able to then fight against Cell when he first emerges. Well, slightly after that. So I'll get more into Piccolo's power level shortly as he goes and fights against 17. But right here, let's talk about Cell's power level. Now, I did a video a while back talking about how strong Cell is when he first emerges from his kind of, not chrysalis stage, his like larval stage. After the egg, he turns into the giant cicada. I would say that Cell, when he first appears, is probably comparative to like Frieza, probably a little bit stronger because the other cells that are inside of him. But after he absorbs people through their bio extract, it's almost like the power that Goku gathers when he's using the Genki Dama or the Spirit Bomb. And so as a result, what occurs over time with regard to that is that Cell gets way stronger than like a power level of some person he eats, he drinks, right? He drinks their milkshake, I drink it up, like Daniel Day-Lewis, right? Instead, what happens is that he drinks their milkshake of their biology, and he gets way more than like a 5 or whatever. And so he starts to drink people that have a normal human power level, but their interior allows him to get way more than that. And so he'll drink thousands of people, tens of thousands, as it goes on to say, per city. Because remember, it's not millions of people in the Dragon Ball cities. King Piccolo killed so many people, and Cell's directly referencing him. That the people on Earth, there's like low millions instead of billions in Dragon Ball, essentially. So that's worth keeping in mind. Either way, he absorbed tens of thousands of people, and thus in turn, he's able to surpass Goku on Namek and a lot of the other fighters at the time. Not just that, but he also feels the same, like I said, in terms of the texture or the type of ki as the other fighters. I've mentioned this before with Trunks, with the power they were sensing from King Cold. Gohan references that right here. he says it's Frieza and his father's ki. And then he's like, oh, it's Son Goku and Piccolo and even my dad. And so they feel Cell's energy, but it feels like all of the others because of their cells that are inside of him. They're not saying that he's as strong as all of them individually or combined, because that doesn't make sense either way, but instead that he feels like his energy like them on, like, I don't know, a psychic, energy, empathetic, whatever way you'd want to say, empathic way. However it is that they could feel and sense energy, that's how it feels to them right now. And thus, as a result, we see that the two of them begin to fight, but Piccolo is still way more powerful than Cell. And as a result, he is able to get the advantage. He fires a blast at him. Of course, it doesn't really deal that much damage to Cell, but he's way stronger. He's able to dodge everything that Cell is throwing at him. He's not going full power because Piccolo is in turn trying to use all of this fight in order to figure out who the hell this guy is. And not just that, but also where he came from, why he was in the time machine, if there is more than him, and so on. He fires an attack at Piccolo, but as Piccolo sees it, he's more scared of what it is and the fact that this guy can use a Kamehameha, and that he can fire this attack at him. And then he catches him off guard, and he uses his tail to drain him. Piccolo, of course, tricks him, and he tells him that, you know, he's defenseless and blah, blah. Cell goes on to explain, you know, where he got the powers from and how Dr. Gero's computer autonomously gathered the cells, and that he'll get even stronger when he absorbs the androids. And then at that point again, after being drained partially, he's still stronger. Of course, Cell mentions things like how he can use the Kamehameha, the Genki Dama, and a bunch of other moves that, you know, the other fighters can use. In the Kai, I think maybe just in the English, he does mention the Kaioken, but he never uses that, which you can argue is because either he can't, for whatever weird reason, which you would think that he should be able to, he's using the quote-unquote invisible Kaioken, or he gets Super Saiyan as he transforms and powers up later on, especially when he shows up to fight Piccolo in 17. A lot of ways that you could factor that in. Either way, I would say that overall, in terms of powers, Cell is still weaker than Piccolo. I'd argue that he is weaker than Vegeta because of what we see next, where he hides from Vegeta. And furthermore, I would say that Cell, in this case, Piccolo, whose cells are in Cell, is a lot stronger than Vegeta and Cell. A little thing right here I'll say as a little aside. He does say one of two ridiculously high battle powers I've been sensing has suddenly disappeared, but the second one is still there dead ahead. You could say that by the fact that he's sweating and that he's saying that there are two ridiculously high battle powers suggests that Cell was stronger than Vegeta, so maybe you could argue that. But again, Cell did hide, so maybe it's because he was just trying to evade Vegeta. I actually did a whole versus battle about who would win between the two of them, and I think that you could argue that Cell would actually win if he absorbed Vegeta, but you could argue that Vegeta's pure power would beat him, because after all, he is saying that his power far exceeds what Cell expected. So I would say you could argue that Vegeta is just saying that compared to him, this guy's power level is super high, but either way, the only one that I would guarantee is stronger than Vegeta here is Piccolo. So how many times stronger is Piccolo? Well, maybe up to twice as strong, but I don't even know if that's the case because, again, we'll go later on into the fight that happens soon with regard to Piccolo versus Android 17 and just how strong they are. Thus far, I'd say that Piccolo, it's more like when Piccolo merged with Kami, it wasn't just that he got like a multiplier like with Nail. Instead, the way that I view it is that you essentially take the power of the original nameless Namekian, who he was before he split from Kami and Piccolo. He split into two. And then what happened at that point is their power went way down. So when they merged, when they reunited, their power level returned to that, plus all the power that the two fighters had trained and developed over time. In this case, Piccolo was already a little bit stronger than, you know, maybe a Super Saiyan on Namek, or a little bit weaker, somewhere in that vicinity. And thus, as a result, I would say that you take the Nameless Namekian, who was already compared by Guru to be stronger than Frieza, and maybe, you know, somewhere around the power of a Super Saiyan, combined with the power of Piccolo at that point in time. You add them together, and that's what Piccolo's strength would be. So I could see him being less than twice as strong as Vegeta, but still significantly above him, especially because, remember, Vegeta trained himself to his absolute limits as far as he could possibly go, and then became a Super Saiyan. And again, this isn't Dragon Ball Super where they keep training, and then they get like a million times stronger because they tried and they stubbed their toe one time and they get a Zenkai, you know? No, instead, this is something a little bit different. So they have limits and they're constantly rubbing up against them, and they need a higher form of training, which we'll be getting into shortly as I get into the next part of this. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to stay tuned for the next episode of this power scaling series of the Cell Saga. Also, get your own copy today of my first book, Nemesis of the Absence, the first in the Children of Mon series, because of course, as I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future. Trunks. Future Trunks.
And you better subscribe!